The countdown for launch of the Space Shuttle Endeavour on mission STS-100 is continuing on schedule today. Launch remains scheduled to occur at about 2:41 p.m. Eastern Time, and the launch opportunity window extends for about 5 minutes. The primary objective of shuttle mission STS-100 is to rendezvous and dock with the orbiting International Space Station for the purposes of installing the Canadian-built Space Station Remote Manipulator System, or SSRMS, and a UHF antenna on the U.S. laboratory Destiny. The 7-member crew of Endeavour will also continue to outfit the U.S. lab with experiments carried inside the multipurpose logistics module during the 8 days that Endeavour will be docked with the station. Astronauts Chris Hadfield and Scott Parazynski will perform the 2 planned spacewalks to continue station construction work. The astronauts to fly aboard Endeavour today will be commanded by Kent Rominger on his 5th space flight. The shuttle will be piloted by Jeff Ashby. And in addition to mission specialists Chris Hadfield and Scott Parazynski, our spacewalkers on this flight, our mission specialists John Phillips, Umberto Guidoni from the European Space Agency, and representing the Russian Space Agency will be Yuri Lonchakov. This is shuttle launch control, and we are at T-minus 3 hours and holding with about an hour and 20 minutes remaining in our hold. And we currently have a live shot of our astronauts seated for their meal in the crew quarters. We have with us our Umberto Guidoni, who is represented from the European Space Agency, and the others. Okay. Chris Hadfield, John Phillips, mission specialist, commanded by Kent Rominger. And all the others are joining him. Of course, our pilots as well, Jeff Ashby. And rounding out the crew, of course, we have Scott Parazynski, and the others that are included are, of course, mission specialist Yuri Lonchakov and John Phillips, our mission specialist. And as they're waving to us, of course, they've got some time now to go before they go into their crew suit-up room and begin suiting activities. And then we expect them to be departing for the pad here in another couple of hours or so. And we have at this time live TV of our commander in the suit-up room as he is preparing to make final preparations before being taken out to the launch pad. Kent Rominger is a veteran of 4 previous space flights, and he will lead the 7-member crew. He has flown as a pilot on missions STS-73 and STS-80 and 85, and he served as commander on mission STS-96. And I believe we're looking at Jeff Ashby. Yes, Jeff Ashby, our pilot on this mission. This is his 2nd space flight. He joined NASA in March of 1995. Chris Hadfield, a member of the Canadian Space Agency, one of our spacewalkers on this flight, and he will serve as a mission specialist on this, his 2nd space flight. Yuri Lonchakov, cosmonaut with the Russian Space Agency, making his very first space flight. Umberto Guidoni, an Italian astronaut representing the European Space Agency, making his 2nd space flight today. He has a PhD in astrophysics from the University of Rome. And this is another one of our mission specialists, Scott Parazynski, on his 4th flight. And I believe that's a message to his family. And coming around the corner, John Phillips, making preparations for his very first space flight aboard Endeavour today. And we have live shots now of our astronauts as they're departing their crew quarters on the 3rd floor of the Operations and Checkout building. All 7 of them are suited up and entering the elevator now that will take them down to the ground level where they will get into their astro van that will take them on out to the pad. And here they are, all of our astronauts: Commander Kent Rominger, Pilot Jeff Ashby, Mission Specialists Chris Hadfield, John Phillips, Scott Perezinski, Umberto Guidoni, and Yuri Lonchikov. Again, we're right on schedule. In fact, a few minutes ahead of schedule. Everything is going well. No issues being discussed on the launch pad at this time, and everything is set to go for our on-time launch at 2:41 p.m. Eastern Time today from Kennedy Space Center. Everything continues to go well, and we're watching the astronauts as they have arrived at the pad.
And there's a good shot of Kent getting his harness on with the help of the very experienced closeout crew.
What's the purpose of the harness?
The harness allows the astronaut to be attached to the parachute in the seat. Obviously, in the event of emergency, we'd use those harnesses with that parachute to bail out of the vehicle. There, Greg is supporting Kent's head so that he doesn't bump any switches inadvertently.
Looks pretty tight in there.
It is pretty tight with that orange suit and all that gear on. You weigh quite a bit more than you normally do, and it's a challenge to get into that seat and get lined up appropriately, but that's why we've got the folks in the cockpit helping him out. In the closeout crew room right now, we've got Yuri Lonchikov. He's in the white room getting his harness on. Yuri will sit on the middeck on the starboard side, and Gene Alexander will follow him in and get him strapped in. Here's a good shot of the middeck Bruce with Gene Alexander on board and Yuri climbing through the hatch. He'll get up on the trampoline we've got set up that Gene is standing on now.
You said a trampoline?
It's a piece of fabric that's stretched across the what we call the ditch, or the hole between the middeck and the airlock right now. It's something to stand on while we're helping the crew get strapped in and getting the crew set up. And then once they get on orbit, they'll remove that piece of fabric and they'll be able to access the airlock. Here we see John Phillips climbing into his seat on the flight deck, and that would be the last crew member on board.
So they're all in the vehicle now. It's just a matter of getting them all strapped in, and John, the last one to enter.
MS3, concept. MS3, this is the MTD. I have you loud and clear. Welcome aboard, Scott. Thanks a lot, Steve. I'll be loud and clear as well.
This is Shuttle Launch Control, and we're just a few seconds away from entering our built-in hold at T-minus 20 minutes, and we are at T-minus 20 minutes and holding.
Countdown clock's at T-minus 20 minutes and holding.
During this period, the NASA test director, Steve Altimus, will ask members of the test team to verify that the correct computer software has been loaded into the computers for the remainder of the count. Also, during this hold, we will verify that the pre-flight inertial measurement unit alignment has been completed. The landing and recovery director will soon be asking if the shuttle landing site is ready and configured for launch, and also a readiness check of the transatlantic contingency sites will be made. A final check to see if the booster recovery ships are ready and on station in the Atlantic Ocean will be made as well. Again, everything is progressing smoothly at this point in the count, and there are no concerns at all. At T-minus 20 minutes and holding, this is Shuttle Launch Control.
FCO, NTD on 212 for a count check. How do you read?
FCO has you loud and clear, NTD, I'm in.
And FCO, NTD's got you loud and clear also. Endeavour Launch Director.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Rama, looks like a beautiful day to take the Canadarm2 and Rafaela to orbit, so good luck and have fun on the International Space Station.
Thank you, Mike. The 7 of us still privileged to deliver the candidate 200 to the space station, give it added a dimension to build itself out into the future, as well as carry Raphael on the maiden flight. More importantly, a big thanks to you and your entire team for delivering us a superb vehicle here in Endeavour.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of the team, have a great flight.
And thank you.
The countdown clock will resume on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
And we are at T-minus 9 minutes and counting. And the ground launch sequencer has been initiated. Launch Test Director Steve Altimus is about to call for the transmittal of stored pre-launch commands as Endeavour is prepared for launch on shuttle mission STS-100 on a mission back to the International Space Station. T-minus 7 minutes, 30 seconds and counting, and the orbiter access arm is being retracted away from the vehicle. This is the walkway used by the crew to gain entry into and out of the vehicle, and it can be returned to position within seconds if necessary. Everything looks good, and we are cleared for launch today. No problems are being reported by the launch team or by Endeavour's crew.
Flight crew, OTC, close and lock your visors. Initiate O2 flow.
At OTC, that is in work.
T-minus 2 minutes and counting.
At OTC from the crew, we have visors and good O2 flow.
15, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. We have a go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, extending the reach of the space station while extending partnerships above the Earth.
Houston, Endeavour, roll program.
Roger, roll, Endeavour.
Houston's now controlling. Endeavour's rolling on course toward the International Space Station. The shuttle already traveling more than 200 miles per hour. Endeavour's altitude now 1.5 miles. Speed now about 500 miles per hour. 3 engines on board the spacecraft are throttling down to 2/3 throttle to prepare the shuttle to pass through the area of maximum air pressure and go supersonic. Three engines now throttling back up to full throttle. Altitude 6 miles. Speed 900 miles an hour.
Go at throttle up.
Roger, Houston, go at throttle up.
Endeavour 5 miles east of the launch pad. Endeavour speed now 1,500 miles per hour. About 1 minute to 25 seconds since launch, the shuttle's already consumed more than 2 million pounds of propellant, weighing less than half of what it did at launch. Altitude now 17 miles, or about 94,000 feet, 15 miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center. 1 minute and 50 seconds since liftoff. Flight controllers will now be standing by for burnout and jettison of the twin solid rockets for the shuttle. A good solid rocket booster separation for Endeavour. 31 miles in altitude now, 38 miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center, speed 3,700 miles per hour. Endeavour's orbital maneuvering system engines are firing now, that as an assist to the main engines to continue to accelerate the shuttle.
Endeavour, Houston. Houston, 2-engine Marone.
Copy, Houston, 2-engine Marone.
Those 2 ohms engines will fire for about 1 minute and 40 seconds as that assist burn takes place. That call also indicating that Endeavour could reach a port landing at Marone, Spain if that were required. All 3 engines on the shuttle operating well, all systems on board in good shape.
15 seconds. 10 seconds. 2 losses go for main engine. Start. Engine start. See you. We hit 100. All right. We are 3 at 102, 102. Rolling LVLH. LVLH. Houston Endeavour roll program.
Roger, roll, Endeavour. 2 digitals.
Through the clouds. Yes, we are. Thanks, John. The engines. 1,000 feet, plenty of box. Should be fine. 3 at 70. There's 1.16. Anyway, we're throttling. 3104, right on the bucket. Roger. We can go at throttle.
Endeavour, Houston, go and throttle up.
Roger, Houston, go at throttle. There's Mach 2, 66,000 feet. 2.3 Gs. 70K. Mach 3, 90,000 feet. Okay, here comes the relay. 2.4 Gs. Good profile. That window has some serious spooge on it. Yeah, beat the... Hey, tail off. Be a loud bang and the booster separate.
50.
C50. Go, I saw the jets fire.
3, 103.
Roger, 103, 103. Hey, Team Ecos. We can get our visors at 02. Ecos converged. Wait for the dump. There's the dump.
There you go.
Hey, copy. Pass to Miko. Oh, look at that. Oh, wow. Man.
Endeavour, Houston, single engine Zaragoza, 104.
Single engine Zaragoza, 104.
And we're now second over Cal.
2 Gs. Thank you. We're Mach 15.8. Right on the line. 58 miles. 57. 825. Thank you. Houston, the passenger activation is complete.
Endeavour, Houston, we concur, and you have a go for APU hydraulic shutdown.
Copy, go for APU hard shutdown. Okay, a bunch of messages coming up.
Looks like there may still be some ice on the tip of the tank. Yeah, it's wild. Some more ice just came off of it, looks like.
This is Mission Control Houston, again receiving downlink television pictures from on board the Space Shuttle Endeavour as it flies at an altitude of approximately 100 miles over the Pacific Ocean, making a southwest to northeast track that will soon take it over Southern California. At the bottom of the view, we can see a little bit of the new Canadarm2, the space station's remote manipulator system, robotic arm, as well as the top of the Italian Space Agency built Raffaello multi-purpose logistics module. That module, a pressurized moving container that is containing a wealth of supplies, equipment, and two new experiment racks, the Express Racks 1 and 2 for the International Space Station's Destiny Laboratory module.
Eight, seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Roger, roll, Endeavour.
Houston's now controlling. Endeavour's rolling on course toward the International Space Station.
Okay, thank you. I've got that open right now and ready to copy the pad for NC2.
Okay, it will be the right engine. and the weight is 250-904, and the TIG 00/16:01:55.5.
This live downlink from Endeavour's middeck shows Chris Hadfield on the left and Scott Parazynski with him on the middeck of the orbiter. Again, they're both EVA astronauts. They're both spacewalking astronauts who will participate in at least 2 spacewalks during docked operations with the International Space Station. It appears they're checking out some spacewalk equipment.
Endeavour Houston for recharging the batteries.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, as long as you're not using that 25-foot extension, the plan that you called down was fine.
Okay, we copy. Thanks.
Endeavour Houston, we are complete with the MPLM environment check, and John can do the APCU deact whenever it's convenient.
Oh, roger, APCU deact can work.
Some other preparatory events that will take place during the day by Commander Kent Rominger will be a checkout of rendezvous equipment that he'll use to rendezvous and dock with the International Space Station tomorrow. Currently, the station's about 4,650 miles ahead of Endeavour, with Endeavour closing in. On the complex throughout the day today, toward the end of the cruise day, late this afternoon, they'll perform another engine firing to adjust the rate at which Endeavour's closing in on the complex. This now is a live television view from Endeavour. This view from a camera at the midway point on the shuttle's robotic arm. On the left-hand side of the screen is the Raffaello logistics module in the shuttle payload bay. Endeavour's just moving into sunrise above the southern Pacific Ocean. This is Mission Control Houston. This is a live television view of the payload bay of Endeavour as seen from a camera on the shuttle's robotic arm. Looking down at television view from Canadarm 1, the shuttle's Canadarm, looking down at its next generation cousin, Canadarm 2, that's bound for the International Space Station. That a longer, stronger, more flexible, and more capable robotic arm.
Houston Endeavour for rendezvous TCS.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm subbing in for Chris. He's now doing his survey with ARM, and just wanted to ask a question. It appears that we only have two of these PDEP RS-422 wide data cables, one of which is in use for TCS and the other for SVS. The cables that we have over in ML60 are a different type of RS-422. In other words, they interface with computers directly. The kind that we needs to interface with the PDEP.
The Canadarm is a precursor to the second generation arm, the most advanced space robotics ever flown, that is now in the payload bay of Endeavour en route toward the International Space Station, the Canadarm 2, that to be installed on the station beginning with a spacewalk planned on Sunday. At present, Endeavour's about 2,600 miles behind the station, closing in at a rate of about 535 miles with each hour-and-a-half long orbit of Earth. On board the crew in the second half of their first full day in orbit, a day that they've spent checking out equipment and making preparations for the arrival at the station tomorrow, and then the ensuing spacewalks and installation work.
Station will have maneuvered to a horizontal attitude. The shuttle will be coming up underneath, as we did on Mission 5A1, flying up under the R-bar, and at about 600 feet, we'll start to fly around onto the velocity vector in front of the station. Coming in from about 400 feet, Commander Rominger will pilot the vehicle straight down the V-bar and dock to the PMA on the front of the laboratory, again, just as we did on 5A.1.
We are in async, and we have a good downlink. Thank you.
This picture of view from the cockpit of Commander Kent Rominger as he prepares for the upcoming engine firing. Again, Endeavour at present about 60 miles behind the station and closing. The engine firing upcoming in about 22 minutes. This live television view from the cockpit of Endeavour, in view now in the foreground, astronaut Scott Perezinski, then European Space Agency astronaut Umberto Guidoni, and Commander Kent Rominger of Endeavour in the forward cockpit, along with pilot Jeff Ashby, the two preparing for an upcoming engine firing that planned to occur in about 17 minutes. It'll be a 27-second long firing of both orbital maneuvering system engines, the large engines located on either side of the tail of the shuttle, that will slow the rate at which Endeavour has been closing in on the station. Endeavour's been closing in on the International Space Station throughout the night at a rate of about 170 miles with each hour-and-a-half long orbit of Earth. This upcoming engine firing will slow that rate dramatically, putting Endeavour on a course over the next orbit to reach a point to 9 miles behind the station. That point, the starting point for the final phase of rendezvous. with Perezinski helping with the rendezvous navigation on board, and the laptops which display visual aids for the navigation, and Hadfield operating a handheld laser ranging device through the overhead windows, using that as a supplemental information on the range between the shuttle and station and the rate at which the two are closing. Also assisting Rominger with the approach is pilot Jeff Ashby, seen in this view. In view in the cockpit, the entire rendezvous team for Endeavour.
Endeavour Houston, good config for the burn.
Roger, good config.
Engine firing now coming up in just about 5 seconds. Again, a 6-second long firing of the shuttle steering jets.
Houston Alpha.
Jim, are you calling on Space to Ground 1?
Yes, I am.
I have you louder and clearer now. The first call was weak.
Endeavour Houston, good burn.
Okay, how do you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Copy, good burn. Well, I'm in the lab. I tried from the service module.
And that engine firing successful on board with the shuttle now about 37 miles from the station, continuing to close in toward a point 9 miles behind the complex. It'll reach that point in about a little less than an hour, about 56 minutes from now at about 6:17 a.m. Central Time. At that time, it will fire its engines again. That in an engine firing called the terminal phase initiation, or TI firing, that puts Endeavour on a course to directly intercept the station over its next orbit, beginning the final phase of the rendezvous.
Endeavour Alpha. Alpha Endeavour, go ahead. Keep calling. No, we were just calling to give you an update, Jim. We're 22,000 feet away. You guys are clearly visible night as well as daytime, and you're in a beautiful machine. Hey, thanks, Lamo. Good to talk to you.
"700 feet away. Now again a view from the International Space Station looking back at the shuttle. Both just moving into sunrise. This a view out of the Destiny Laboratory looking at the shuttle 3,700 feet below and slightly behind the station. A fourth and final course correction engine firing for Endeavour's now coming up in about 8 minutes, after which Endeavour's commander Kent Rominger will take over manual control of the shuttle's approach toward the station, that occurring about an hour ahead of docking. The docking time adjusted during Endeavour's approach by about 7 minutes later. Docking's anticipated now at about 8:39 a.m. Central Time this morning. All activities continue to go smoothly for the crews on board the shuttle and the station. This television view from the International Space Station. Endeavour about 3,150 feet away from the station, according to onboard shuttle radar. Closing in on the station at about 2.5 miles per hour. Just under 4 feet per second. This a sequential still video image now from Endeavour, looking up through Endeavour's docking mechanism toward the International Space Station. Commander Kent Rominger first reported sighting the station from a distance of some 40 miles away this morning. The shuttle and station are above the Pacific Ocean, approaching the southern tip of South America.
That's a really nice picture of the shuttle you're giving us.
Good. A little too bright earlier when the sun was just coming up, and then we were taking some other pictures, so I was distracted.
Flight engineer Jim Voss taking these pictures on board the station. Endeavour now about a half a mile away. 2.5 minutes from engine firing, the fourth of 4 course correction engine firings.
We have not the greatest view of you right
Endeavour
now.
Houston, the SM and FGB arrays are feathered. You have the go for V-bar approach and go for docking.
Copy, go for docking.
This now live television view from the International Space Station showing Endeavour 400 feet away.
Go ahead.
We have good video again, and with the shuttle on final approach, we just wanted to verify that you were in the PMA-2 arrival procedure.
And we have that out.
Copy.
Endeavour 300 feet below the station in this view, and 240 miles below Endeavour, the Sahara Desert. This is Mission Control Houston. This is a playback of videotape recorded on board Endeavour during this morning's approach and docking to the International Space Station. This view as Commander Kent Rominger flew Endeavour up toward a position in front of the station, position 300 feet in front of the station, from which he began final approach to the docking port, to which Endeavour is now attached at the end of the Destiny laboratory module. Docking occurred this morning at 8:39 a.m. Central Time. This is Mission Control Houston. This is now a television playback from on board Endeavour. This is a tape of scenes recorded during the docking of the shuttle to the station, that occurring at 8:59 a.m. Central Time this morning. Again, Endeavour docked to the International Space Station, making initial contact at about 8:59 a.m. Central Time. That is, the two spacecraft flew 243 miles above the southern Pacific Ocean, well southeast of New Zealand. Now on board Endeavour, the docking ring is being commanded to retract, pulling the two spacecraft together. Once it's fully retracted, then hooks and latches will be engaged that will seal the two together firmly for the duration of Endeavour's visit.
Endeavour, we show ourselves complete in the rendezvous timeline.
And we concur. Terrific job, Endeavour.
This is a live television view from the cockpit of Endeavour. Commander Kent Rominger and pilot Jeff Ashby are currently going through a procedure to power down systems no longer required on board the shuttle. Those were brought up earlier today as part of preparations for the rendezvous. They'll be powered off now to conserve electricity. Crew's also busy stowing away navigation equipment and items that were used during the rendezvous. Key players in the rendezvous, in addition to Rominger and pilot Jeff Ashby, were astronaut Scott Perezinski and Canadian Space Agency astronaut Chris Hadfield, both on the flight deck during rendezvous. Perezinski also overseeing the shuttle docking mechanism.
Alpha Houston, we're getting good downlink.
This is Mission Control Houston. We're now getting downlink television from on board the International Space Station as this camera is pointed at the hatch at the porthole looking into pressurized mating adapter number 2, where the crew of the Space Shuttle Endeavour is now transferring early transfer items.
Houston, Endeavour, while Jeff's just finishing queuing that up, we have video from the mid-deck if you want it.
We've got it. That'd be great.
This is Mission Control Houston. We're watching downlink television pictures from the mid-deck area of the Space Shuttle Endeavour as the crew is working with transfer operations, taking a look at some of the items that they received from the International Space Station recently when they opened the hatches between pressurized mating adapter number 2. Again, both sides of the hatches won't be opened at the same time so that the crews can greet each other until Monday. That'll allow the pressures to be different in the two different vehicles in preparation for tomorrow's spacewalk by Chris Hadfield and Scott Perezinski, who are in the center of your picture here.
Copy. Thank you for all that.
The payload bay camera being controlled by the instrumentation and communications officer here in Mission Control. Now looking along the length of the International Space Station, starting on your bottom of your picture is the Destiny Laboratory and its special optical quality window. Past that is the Unity module, the other American segment of the station. Then the Zarya control module, one of the Russian segments. And beyond it, the Zvezda service module section, followed by the Soyuz taxi vehicle that will be replaced following this flight. Again, the Earth below is a good close look at Mexico as the International Space Station orbits at an altitude of about 240 statute miles overhead. This pass will also take us directly over the east central portion of the United States.
Pointing out the window with a 40 millimeter lens and the outside film on it. We're ready to go.
You guys are always way ahead. I'll read this to you, but you're going to delete scene 16. That was an SSRMS scene. You're going to modify the scene list by also deleting scenes. And we're going to modify scene 24. 24 is the MPLM on the RMS. You should choose optimum framing. Use the 40 millimeter lens for 27 seconds. And you should look out the window, too. It's a really nice view of the U.S. right now.